Chapter 16 is the forest walk. Hester is determined to find some way to talk to Reverend Dimmesdale about Chillingworth, and she's hoping to bump into him somewhere when he's out taking a walk. She knows that he walks sometimes along the shores of the peninsula or in the wooded hills of the neighboring country, and she keeps hoping she'll see him somewhere. She could obviously go see him at his home. I mean, she is someone who is supposed to be bringing Pearl there for some religious education, some way or another. People go see him all the time to just talk about their sins, or, nobody would ever be suspicious of her going to his house to talk to him. But of course, Roger Chillingworth is there, and she's worried that if she were to go there, that somehow he would interfere with their conversation. So she really wants to be able to walk with him out in the whole wide world so they can have the fresh air to breathe when they talk together. So she wants to be away from the community. And I do think this is an important detail. We're going to talk about this again. She had been later on, we don't know how many weeks have gone by here, even days, but she had been attending a sick chamber. So she had gone to someone's home in the town who was unwell and helping care for them. And she heard while she was there that Reverend Dimmesdale had gone to visit Apostle Eliot among the Indian converts. And I think this is an important thing to notice here. An Indian convert is referring to the Native Americans who the Puritans tried to convert to Christianity. And so this would have been someone who had converted to Christianity under the influence of the Puritans. And so she hears that he has gone there and that the next day he'll be coming back to the colony. So she goes the next day with Pearl, hoping to meet him. And I just want to point out now, for the next at least page, maybe even longer, we're going to have a lot of descriptions of nature. It talks first about how what sort of path they take to go out to where the Native Americans live. It's a narrow footpath that's got surrounded by like primeval forests, and the path itself is narrow and dark. It says here it was an image not amiss the moral wilderness in which she had so long been wandering. So she sort of connects the wild wilderness to her own alienation, her own sort of wilderness within her soul. Notice how the weather is symbolic. The day was chill and somber. The clouds are gray. The only place there's sun is up ahead. And Pearl very boldly says, "Mother, the sunshine does not love you," which of course is true. And then she says, "Look it's playing a ways off, but I'm a child. I can catch it. It will not run for me, for I wear nothing on my bosom yet." So literally, I just wrote OMG here because it's just like she's figured out on some level that scarlet letter is a curse, that it's something that keeps her from having joy. And she's like, I don't have that yet, so the sun likes me. And Hester says, I hope that you never will have anything on your bosom. She hopes that her daughter will never have anything like the scarlet letter to mark her. And she says, will it not come of its own accord when I am a woman grown? So it's interesting that Pearl just assumes that the scarlet letter is something you get when you're older, that everybody is going to get that, which is interesting too. So the light lingered around the lonely child as if glad of such a playmate until Hester comes close, and then sure enough, the sun goes away. And Hester says, see, now I can stretch out my hand and grasp some of the sun. And as she attempted to do so, the sunshine vanished. So all of this is mirroring Hester's soul, Hester's feelings. Her day-to-day life is shadowy and dark. It goes on to say that Pearl never ever seems to lose any of her vivacious spirit. She does not have the disease of sadness, which almost all children in these latter days inherit from the troubles of their ancestors. So Hester is recognizing that the other Puritan children, by the time they're Pearl's age, are not happy in the way that Pearl is happy because they have taken on the attitudes of their parents. And then she worries, is Pearl's happiness a disease? Or is it just the reflex of the wild energy with which Hester had fought against her sorrow before Pearl's birth? Like, did she somehow give her the energy? She's always questioning, what does Pearl's personality mean? She's definitely worried about it because it's just unusual and obviously challenging. Come, my child, said Hester, we will sit down a little way to rest. And Pearl says, well, I'm not tired. Will you tell me a story while we're sitting? And Hester says, well, what about? And Pearl says, tell me about the black man, how he haunts the forest, how he carries a book with him, a big, heavy book with iron clasps, and how the ugly black man offers his book as an iron pen to everybody that meets him here among the streets. So she wants to hear the story of Satan. And Hester says, who told you this story? And Pearl says, oh, it was the old dame in the chimney corner at the house where you watched last night. So she's saying that when they had gone to the house where the woman was sick and Hester had been sitting and helping her, there was another old woman in that house who was muttering stories about the devil. And Pearl goes on to explain that she thought Pearl was asleep while she was talking, but she said a lot of things that Pearl heard, like that 1,000 people had met him here and had written in his book and have his mark on them, and that ugly-tempered lady, old Mistress Hibbins, was one, which we know that she is a witch. And Mother, the old dame, said that this scarlet letter was the black man's mark on thee, and that it glows like a red flame when thou meetest him at midnight here in the dark. Is it true? Do you meet him in the nighttime? Of course not. And of course, immediately, Hester says, have you ever seen me leave? Of course not. If there is such a black man, Pearl says, did you ever meet him? And is this his mark? And finally, Hester does tell her. She says, once in my life, I met the black man. This scarlet letter is his mark. So she's beginning to tell her more honestly what the scarlet letter means. Then I have another reference here. This whole paragraph is about nature again. So I just want to point out, we've had lots of examples where Hawthorne writes excessively about how the natural world looks, how it sounds, feels, smells, lots of beautiful, beautiful description of nature. And one might think, oh, does he just like writing about nature? Is it just like his creative inspiration? Well, it's quite possible he likes writing about nature, but there's a deeper meaning to this choice. He is heavy-handedly giving us very, very detailed descriptions of nature to be a contrast to the Puritan life. The Puritan life is not natural. It constrains people in unnatural ways. It insists upon behaviors that are too difficult to uphold for any length of time, that take away the joys of life. And so this is to show us that humans are lacking the natural world. They're also lacking their natural selves in this community. And so to read these descriptions, I think, is just really to be a contrast to, this constricted life that they live. And it's interesting, too, that nature is revealing the people's feelings, because if you remember on the previous page, nature is dark and gray, which mirrors how Hester is feeling here. Pearl says that the little book is sad. And she says, why art thou so sad? And she's thinking that, the brook sounds like how people are feeling, and people are sad. What does this sad little brook say, Mother? And it says, if thou hast sorrow of thine own, the brook might tell thee of it, answered her mother, even as it is telling me of mine. So she's saying people who have sorrow can understand the brook, but if you don't have sorrow, maybe you can't. And of course, Hester can understand the brook because she does have sorrow. But now, little Pearl, I hear a footstep along the path and the noise of one putting aside the branches. And Pearl says, is it the black man? No, it's not Satan. She tells Pearl to go and play, but not to go far, to stay nearby so that she can hear her call her. And she says, if it is no black man, is it the minister? It is the minister. And Pearl says, he has his hand over his heart, she notices right away, because he always do. Is it because when the minister wrote his name in the book, the black man set his mark in that place? But why does he not wear it outside his bosom as thou dost, mother? So she is just never going to stop asking questions. And Hester's like, go, go play by the brook. So Pearl goes away. The little stream would not be comforted and still kept telling its unintelligible secret of some very mournful mystery that had happened, or making a prophetic lamentation about something that has yet to happen within the verge of the dismal forest. So the brook is still sad. Pearl is playing by it. So Pearl, who had enough of shadow in her own little self, chose to break off all acquaintance with this repining brook. She goes away from it. She's like, you're too sad. When her elf child had departed, Hester Prynne made a step or two toward the track that led through the forest, but still remained under the deep shadow of the trees, and she beheld the minister advancing along the path, entirely alone, leaning on a staff which he had cut by the wayside. He looked haggard and feeble, betrayed a nerveless despondency in his air, which had never so remarkably characterized him in his walks about the settlement. So out here in the privacy of nature, where the Puritan people can't see him, he is even sadder, weaker. Here it was woefully visible in this intense seclusion of the forest, which of itself would have been a heavy trial to the spirits. There was a listlessness in his gait, as if he saw no reason for taking one step further, nor felt any desire to do so, and would have been glad, could he be glad of anything, to fling himself down at the root of the nearest tree and lie there passive for evermore. The leaves might bestrew him, and the soil gradually accumulate and form a little hillock over his frame, no matter whether there were life in it or no. Death was too definite an object to be wished for or avoided. So this directly is showing how nature is going to comfort him, is going to receive him, is going to give him a place to be himself. So this is, I think if you were to write about the role of nature in this story, this chapter has a lot of really good quotes. To Hester's eye, the Reverend Dimmesdale exhibited no symptom of positive and vivacious suffering. So he's not like agonizing. He doesn't look in pain. He looks weary, tired. He thinks he's alone. Except that, as little Pearl had remarked, he kept his hand over his heart.